Okay guys, welcome to the structural ranges continuation, where we pretty much are just going to follow up on what we spoke on in the last video. And although I may repeat some stuff from the previous video, and I might repeat some of this stuff in the next video, I'm trying to kind of build upon each video so it makes it easier to understand, and I believe repetition can help that. And the only way that I feel like I can hinder it is if I try to essentially rush through the concepts. So I'm trying to take my time and add on new things each video. Okay, so the main goal of this video is essentially to emphasize, right, that structural ranges are composed of structural ranges, right? Meaning that in order for a swing reversal to occur, right, you need that micro break of structure first. But people see that and are too optimistic about it sometimes, and it essentially blinds them. And the best way for me to put it is that you chase lows and highs, right? Just because you see a micro break of structure from a point of interest does not mean you're going to get a major intraday reversal, right? Which is why, the whole concept from the last video, the showing its hand, is so important. It gives you clarity on top of clarity, if that makes sense. And on top of that, I also want to mention that as you're developing your models, as you're developing your trading plan, right, I want you to not only designate structural levels to specific or a specific range of time frames. I want you to also designate your structural levels to a quote-unquote meaning. And what I mean by that is, for example, your position and your swing structural ranges can be easily seen as higher time frame POIs and as overall directional bias, right? Or you can even include your major intraday, right? Whereas it could be your position is your overall, your swing is your long-term bias, and your major intraday is your midterm bias, if that makes sense, right? So you can get creative with it. And then you can easily say like your swing and your major intraday are used to find points of interest, whereas now your minor intraday is used to show its hand based off of those points of interest. Just get creative with it. And then you could easily say your scalping and your micros could be for legitimately, entering your trades, right? So I want you to get creative with that, but I want you to actually designate specific structural levels for each each type of structural levels, if that makes sense, right? So just designate different things for different time frames or different structural levels. Okay, so essentially with the example that I'm going to show here, right, I'm pretty much on the M30, right, which is kind of your minor intraday, borderline major intraday. As you get more experience with this, you'll be able to read your major intraday like structural ranges, and even when you're on your quote-unquote minor intraday time frames. So right off the bat, right, we know this is bullish. Okay, so we know the directional bias that this is going, right? Why? We've taken out major highs and we're now here. Okay, so right, you could see that we're starting a pullback here, right? So although this range is what created our new high here, right, this is now still overall bullish, right? But we do see a break of structure sorry about that. Okay, sorry about that. What I essentially mean is that we see this break of structure based off of this minor intraday leg inside of this major intraday leg, right? Hence, the pullback starting, right? So this could be another major intraday leg, right? Whereas these are your minors, and even though you have that minor structure break here, right, to avoid confusion, right, I'm going to use this entire range here, right, because we took out an immediate leg here, right, whereas my other legs, right, just so you can see some clarity here, would essentially be from this low to this high, right. This is one of the first times we see a type of pullback, right, and then I'll see this as another leg, right. So notice this full leg here takes out a previous leg, right. So even though we're seeing these breaks of structures here, right, this is just a pullback to this initial break of structure. Does that mean sell here? No, because we're still overall bullish. Okay, yes, you can have a very nice minor intraday trade, like this is, for example, 35. This is like 60, 70 pips, okay? But we're looking for the overall moves with high probability, okay? So, as you can see immediately from here, right, we now pretty much break structure here, okay? Right, so although we break structure here, this isn't where we stop, right? This low creates this high. So now to avoid confusion, I'm now looking at something like this, okay? These are my legs here, right? So, right, as we see this happen, right, we might see a type of structure break here, but our overall range is still intact, okay? So, right, let's say this is now a minor intraday leg inside of this overall range. So we know we're bullish, right? But let's say this is to me picking a low because I don't see any type of point of interest here, right? Just hypothetically, right? Let's say that this minor intraday now creates this new high, right? So now our major intraday is bullish. Our minor intraday also shows that we're bullish, right? So now I can start looking down, right, into my scalping time frames, into my micros. I'm not going to get into the micros for obvious reasons I have stated before, right? But, right, our scalping, right, I'm not going to say why this is a POI either. That's more for phase 3, right? But we now have structural support from our major intraday. Our minor intraday has shown a tan too because we took out structure here, right? So now, although we're taking out these very, very minor structure points here from probably your micro time frames, right, we're still bullish because our swing is bullish, our major intraday is bullish, and now our minor intraday is bullish, right? So we have a point of interest, right? And from here, this created that new high. But as you're playing this, right, you see that, right? You see the reaction that fails to create a new high, but we're still bullish. So this is now a potential point of liquidity only if it fits that overall picture. Okay, so unless this breaks, I am still bullish. Okay, and this would then be the next, I'd pretty much make another square here, and that would create that new range to go higher. Okay, so even though, right, this came here, this could have easily been another point of interest, right, and that failed to break this low too, right? So we're now inside of a very messy structure, just a very structured mess here, I guess I could say. And then although this high did not create a new low, this new low did not create a new high. So to completely avoid any type of confusion here, keep in mind where our overall structure is, right? Our swing is bullish, our major intraday is bullish, our minor intraday is bullish. Okay, so I'm not going to try to change my bias solely until this fully breaks because it's my minor intraday, right? But to initially see that, because this reacted for my point of interest, I don't want to see this break, or else my entire bias could fall apart. Why? Because then we can now see these as unwillingness, and it could lead to bigger structure breaks. So, right, because this never broke, although this broke this here, and let's just go and take all this off, just because this overall high took this, and even this took this, right, these smaller structure breaks, right, don't really mean much to my overall direction, right? Which is why I say, just because you get scalping breakup structures, minor intraday breakup structures in the opposite direction of what the overall bias is, right, the validity, the security of those structural ranges is a lot more slim, and that is perfectly shown here, right? Because, as I said 2 to 3 times already, your swing is bullish, your major intraday is bullish, your minor intraday is bullish, right? But if your scalp and your micro are bearish, your entry might be wrong, but your bias might still be correct, right? So you see how if you essentially correlate all of them, right, and make it make sense, your probability of seeing a winning trade is highly increased, right? And that goes back towards the logic aspect, that goes back to the aspect of making it make sense. Okay, so hopefully that made sense for you guys. So just remember, right, structural ranges, right, are composed of more structural ranges, and in order to see a swing reversal, you must first see a micro breakup structure. But just because you get a micro breakup structure or a scalping breakup structure, even a minor intraday breakup structure, if your major intraday, your swing, and your position is still bullish, right, the security of those micro, scalp, and maybe even minor intraday breakup structures will not be as quote-unquote probable, right, not as secure, right? So just remember, correlate all of your structural levels and make sure you have designated roles for your different structural levels. Like I said, know which ones are for your bias, know which ones are for POIs, know which ones are for entry. And many different levels can have many different roles, right? Because at the end of the day, it's not about the tools that we use, it's about how those tools are used. Okay, so I'll see you guys in the next video.